Hello, I'm Alyssa Hillary Zisk. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. Today I'm going to talk about some problems with the all too common argument that queer people, including trans people, are just neurodivergent, implying that we're therefore not really queer. My first slide shows the title of my talk is Who Cares If Neurodivergence Makes Us Queer? For one of the big problems with that argument. It also says that this is for feminist perspectives on neurodiversity and neuronormativity. January 29th, 2021, gives my name and pronouns and says that I'm at the University of Rhode Island. Specifically, I'm a doctoral candidate in the Interdisciplinary Neuroscience program there, and I am autistic, though my official research there is not autism research. It gives 2 email addresses you can reach me at, allyhillary@gmail.com, which is personal and permanent, as well as alyssazisk@uri.edu, which is institutional, but I'm about to graduate, so who knows. And my Twitter handle is @yes_that2. My next slide has the text problem, arguments that queer neurodivergent people are really just neurodivergent in white text on a blue splotch. Because the first problem with those arguments is the fact that people make them and use them to decide that can't ignore the fact that we are also queer, try to get us to stop being queer, or even weaponize our queerness against other people. That could mean people just pretending that our queerness is not there, or it can mean that we receive conversion therapy in the guise of treatment or support for our neurodivergence, on top of all the issues related to assuming any given form of neurodivergence requires treatment. Some people want treatment, some do not. And what we want often has little relationship to what treatments are offered. It can also mean people use increased awareness of neurodivergent queer people, or even reality that certain forms of neurodivergence are now known to come with increased rates of queerness. For example, autistic people are more likely than neurotypical people to be transgender, as a weapon against queer neurodivergent people or against queer people who may or may not be neurodivergent. There's recently been some high-profile instances in which trans-masculine autistic people were used as an example of a group who would need to be protected from our own decisions to transition, which, hello? What? No, don't do that. But ignoring or denying our identities with the claimed aim of protecting us from ourselves, or calling the queerness a disorder that is related to our neurology, is not a new problem. Simon Baron-Cohen's lab put out a press release several years ago in which they described several forms of queerness, I believe asexuality, being a lesbian, or being transmasculine, as testosterone-related disorders in autistic people who they were calling women, often incorrectly. So that's not new, and a case study from 1996 argued that cross-gender preoccupations in 2 autistic children were about autism, not gender. So, long history of this nonsense. It's actively used to prevent us from living as the queer people we may be. And with increasing awareness of the fact that autistic people are less likely to be cisgender and heterosexual, and with likely following awareness that other neurodivergent people are also more likely to be queer, this is getting weaponized against all queer people more. Which means the first problem is the use of this argument at all. The next problem is logical. Correlation is not causation. The image is a comic from XKCD. There are two characters. Cue Ball is a stick figure with no particular defining characteristics, is in this case holding what is probably a cell phone. Black Hat is wearing a black hat and sitting at a desk with a laptop. Cue Ball says, another huge study found no evidence that cell phones cause cancer. What was the World Health Organization thinking? Black Hat says, I think they just got it backward. From off screen in the second panel, huh? From Cue Ball. Black Hat, well, take a look. Black Hat is holding up his laptop for Cue Ball to see, holding it by the top of the laptop screen. That's not a good way to hold a laptop. The graph is captioned United States, and it has two sets of vertical axes. One is total cancer incidence per 100,000. One is cell phone users per 100. The time on the common horizontal axes runs from 1970 to 2010. Cancer incidence increases from 1970 to about 1990 and then levels off. Cell phone users starts increasing around 1980 and continues to increase through the end of the graph at 2010. In the last panel, we're back to Cue Ball and Black Hat. Cue Ball says, there are so many problems with that. Black Hat says, just to be safe, until I see more data, I'm going to assume cancer causes cell phones. So that is the problem with looking at a correlation or an association and saying, yes, I think this is causation. While the argument that neurodivergence could cause queerness is somewhat more based in logic and reality than cancer causing cell phones, we don't actually know, and we're not really going to know anytime soon, if queerness causes neurodivergence. If neurodivergence causes queerness, or the other way around. As a neuroscientist, part of me thinks that it is a potentially interesting question, but as a queer neurodivergent person, I am well aware that in the world we currently live in, investigating causation on either of those things currently leads nowhere good. Please don't. So, we might trend queer because of a causation thing. It could also be something else causing both. It could be that if we're already going to be excluded for neurodivergence, we conclude that we may as well be excluded as the people that we really are. Dunno. Not a top priority to find out. The last point has roots in both discussions of language and in philosophy of mind. The image is from identityfirstautistic.org. It is captioned with both neurology is not an accessory and that URL. It has 4 stick figures. The first is captioned suffers from autism and has a spectrum-colored knife stabbing a stick figure in the head. The second is captioned on the spectrum, and the stick figure is standing on spectrum colors. The third is captioned person with autism. The person is holding a handbag with spectrum colors. The last, autistic person, has the spectrum colors covering the entire head area. With the statement that, of course, neurology is not an accessory. The implication is that anything caused by a person's neurology is similarly not an accessory. It is similarly not detachable. That is to say, if neurodivergence did somehow make us queer, that would make our queerness non-detachable and not an accessory. Saying that we were therefore just neurodivergent would not actually make sense. On top of being harmful logic, it would also just be bad logic. So can we not do bad, harmful logic, please? It's not the point. Caring if neurodivergence makes us queer is not actually going to invalidate queerness unless you are intentionally using bad logic to invalidate people. So why would we actually care? Thank you. I guess that is questions time.